There are some stories that are not told but whispered. They exist in the chiaroscuro of memory, in the haunting space between a dream and a nightmare. In 1955, a film was released that was unlike anything American audiences had ever seen. It was a gothic fairy tale, a story of childhood innocence, stalked by an almost supernatural evil. At the heart of this terrifying story were two children, a little girl clutching her doll, and her older brother, a boy, with the weight of the world on his small shoulders. He was the protector, the guardian, the fierce, unblinking hero of the story. The boy's name in the film was John Harper. The actor who played him, who gave one of the most astonishingly powerful child performances in cinema history, was named Billy Chapin. Billy was not just a character in a movie. He was the unwavering moral compass in a world gone mad. He faced down a monster, and against all odds, he endured. But what happens when the cameras stop rolling? What happens to a boy who battles such profound darkness on screen and is then expected to simply return to a normal life? This is not just the story of a classic film. It is the story of the brilliant, intense young actor at his center. It's a story of a phenomenal talent that burned brighter than almost any other, and of a life that, after the spotlight faded, drifted slowly and silently into the very darkness he had fought so bravely against on screen. This is the story of Billy Chapin, the boy on the river. To understand Billy's journey, you have to transport yourself to the world he was born into. William Billy Chapin was born on December 28, 1943, in Los Angeles, California. This was a city powered by the dream factory of Hollywood, and for the Chapin family, entertainment wasn't a distant dream. It was the family business. Billy's mother, Marguerite, was a driven and ambitious woman who saw talent in her children and was determined to see it flourish. Billy was the middle child of three, and all of them were performers. His older brother Michael and his younger sister Lauren were also working child actors. This was not a story of a child being plucked from obscurity at a soda fountain. From a very young age, acting was Billy's job. It was what was expected of him. The Hollywood of the late 1940s and early 1950s was a place of immense opportunity, but also intense pressure. The studio system was still a powerful force, and child actors were a valuable commodity. They were expected to be professionals in miniature, to hit their marks, say their lines, and deliver authentic emotion on cue, all without the protections and psychological support systems that are in place today. For the Chapin children, life was a whirlwind of auditions, rehearsals, and time spent on film sets. It was a life that required immense discipline and sacrifice, a childhood traded for a career. And Billy, from the very beginning, proved he was more than capable of handling it. He was a natural. Before he ever became a film star, Billy Chapin was a stage veteran. In 1951, at the age of just 7, he made his debut on Broadway in the musical Three Wishes for Jamie. He was praised for his performance, holding his own on the biggest stage in the world. This experience on Broadway instilled in him a level of professionalism and craft that was rare for a child actor. He understood the discipline of live performance, the need to be consistent night after night. When he returned to Hollywood, he was armed with a set of skills that made him stand out. He quickly began to land roles in both film and the new burgeoning medium of television. He appeared in films like the sci-fi feature Tobor the Great, and in episodes of the popular TV series Dragnet and Leave It to Beaver. He was becoming known as a reliable, talented, and versatile young actor. He was particularly good at conveying a certain kind of seriousness, an intensity that other child actors lacked. And it was this unique quality, this look of premature wisdom and fierce determination in his eyes, that would bring him the role that would define his life and grant him cinematic immortality. In the mid-1950s, the legendary actor Charles Laughton decided to step behind the camera for the first time. Laughton was a giant of the stage and screen, a celebrated Oscar-winning performer known for his roles as Quasimodo and Henry VIII. But he had a singular, unique vision for a film he wanted to direct. It was based on a haunting novel by Davis Grubb called The Night of the Hunter. The story was dark, lyrical, and deeply unsettling. It was the story of a predatory, self-proclaimed preacher named Reverend Harry Powell, who marries and murders a lonely widow to get his hands on a stash of money hidden by her late husband. The only two people who know where the money is are the widow's two young children, John and Pearl. After their mother's murder, the children are forced to flee, embarking on a terrifying journey down the Ohio River with a monstrous preacher in relentless pursuit. Casting the film was crucial. For the role of the terrifying Reverend Powell, Laughton cast Robert Mitchum, an actor whose laid-back, sleepy-eyed persona concealed a capacity for genuine menace. For the doomed mother, he cast the lovely Shelley Winters, but the most important casting decision was the children. The entire film would rest on their shoulders, particularly the boy John. The story is told through his eyes. He needed a child actor who could convey not just fear, but defiance, intelligence, and a heavy, adult-like burden of responsibility. He needed a boy who could go toe-to-toe with Robert Mitchum and be believable. Laughton auditioned countless child actors, but he was looking for something specific. He found it in the intense, serious gaze of 11-year-old Billy Chapin. Billy had the gravity, the premature cynicism, and the fierce, protective instinct that the role of John Harper demanded. Along with 5-year-old Sally Jane Bruce as his younger sister Pearl, the cast was complete. Production on one of cinema's most audacious and terrifying masterpieces was about to begin. The making of The Night of the Hunter is the stuff of Hollywood legend. It was a production unlike any other, defined by the singular artistic vision of its director, Charles Laughton. Laughton was not interested in making a conventional Hollywood thriller. He wanted to create a visual poem, a German expressionist nightmare set in the American heartland. He and his cinematographer, Stanley Cortez, crafted a world of deep, dramatic shadows and stark, stylized landscapes. The film's look was breathtakingly beautiful and deeply unsettling, a visual representation of a child's terrifying perspective on the adult world. But Laughton's artistic genius came with a notoriously difficult and unconventional way of working, especially with his young actors. Laughton, the celebrated actor, found himself completely at odds with the process of directing children. He had little patience for their natural inclinations and found their acting styles to be too polished and artificial. He wanted raw, authentic emotion. To get it, he resorted to a variety of unorthodox techniques. He would often act out the scenes for Billy and Sally himself, demonstrating the exact expression and line reading he wanted them to mimic. Other times, to get a genuine reaction of fear, he would simply stand behind the camera and scream at them just before yelling action. It was a method that would be considered highly questionable, if not outright abusive, by today's standards. His relationship with Billy Chapin was particularly complex. Laughton recognized Billy's immense talent and professionalism, but he also struggled to get past what he saw as a method actor shell. The stories from the set are fascinating. Robert Mitchum, the film's terrifying villain, ironically became the children's greatest protector and friend. He developed a deep affection for Billy and Sally and would often act as a buffer between them and the demanding director. Mitchum later claimed that, in many ways, he ended up directing the children himself. He would talk to them, make them feel comfortable, and then Laughton would direct Mitchum on how he wanted the scene. to play out. This unusual dynamic, with the on-screen monster being the off-screen protector, created a strange but effective working environment. Mitchum's kindness allowed Billy to feel safe enough to access the deep well of emotion required for the role. And the performance Billy delivered is, without exaggeration, one of the greatest by a child in the history of film. He is the anchor of the movie. As John Harper, he is burdened with a terrible secret, a promise he made to his father to protect his little sister and the hidden money. His performance is a masterclass in subtlety. You can see the constant calculation in his eyes, the suspicion with which he regards every adult, the fierce, almost feral love he has for his sister. He is not a passive victim. He is an active protagonist, constantly thinking, planning, and fighting back. Watch the scene where he finally confronts Reverend Powell, wielding his father's pocket knife. There is real defiance, real courage in his stance, or the heart-stopping sequence of the river journey, where he becomes the captain of their tiny boat guiding his sister through a dreamlike, menacing landscape. He carries the entire emotional and narrative weight of the film. It is a performance of astonishing maturity and power. But the world in 1955 was not ready for The Night of the Hunter. Upon its release, the film was a critical and commercial disaster. Audiences found it too strange, too scary, too artistic. Critics dismissed it as pretentious and bizarre. The film's financial failure was a devastating blow to Charles Laughton. He had poured his heart and soul into creating his masterpiece, and its rejection by the public broke his spirit. He was so personally wounded by the experience that he never directed another film. The very project that cemented Billy Chapin's legacy as a brilliant actor was, at the time, considered a massive failure. Imagine being 12 years old, having given the performance of your life in a film you believed in, only to see it dismissed and forgotten. It was a harsh introduction to the cruel, often nonsensical realities of the movie business. After the commercial failure of The Night of the Hunter, Billy Chapin's career began to slowly wind down. He was entering his teenage years, that notoriously difficult transitional period for child actors. He made a few more film appearances and continued to work in television for a couple of years. He had a role in the 1956 film Tension at Table Rock and appeared in shows like Fury and The Millionaire. But his last credited role was in 1959. As he aged out of the child actor category, the roles simply stopped coming. The intense, serious boy was now a teenager, and Hollywood, having gotten what it needed from him, moved on. By the time he was 16, the career that had defined his entire childhood was over. The years that followed are a portrait of a life lived in the shadow of a brilliant past. After leaving Hollywood, Billy, like many young men of his generation, joined the military, serving in the Marine Corps. When he returned to civilian life, he was faced with the challenge that confronts so many former child stars. What do you do with the rest of your life when you peaked at age 11? He worked a series of jobs, struggling to find his footing in a world that no longer applauded his every move. The discipline and structure of a film set were gone, replaced by the mundane realities of everyday life. And it was during this period, away from the spotlight and the protective circle of his family on set, that he began a long and devastating battle with addiction. The specific details of his struggles are not well documented. Billy Chapin lived the rest of his life in quiet anonymity, a stark contrast to his famous childhood. But reports from those who knew him in the circumstances of his later life paint a picture of a man who was haunted by personal demons. He struggled with both drug and alcohol abuse for many years. His health began to fail. His life became one of hardship and poverty. The boy who had been the primary breadwinner for his family, who had stood on Broadway stages and shared the screen with Hollywood legends, was now facing a very different and very lonely reality. It is a tragic and sadly familiar story. The pressures of a childhood spent in the intense artificial world of entertainment can leave deep, invisible scars. For some, the applause is its own kind of addiction, and when it stops, the silence can be unbearable. For Billy, the demons he fought off-screen proved to be far more relentless than the cinematic monster he had so bravely vanquished as a child. The central tragedy of Billy Chapin's life lies in the profound disconnect between his on-screen strength and his off-screen vulnerability. As John Harper, he was the epitome of resilience. He was a boy forced to become a man, shouldering a burden of responsibility that would crush most adults. He was clever, resourceful, and fiercely protective. He guarded his secret. He guarded his sister, and he guarded his heart. This character became his legacy, the image of him that is frozen in time. But in his own life, Billy struggled to find that same resilience. The boy who protected the hidden treasure on film could not protect himself from the ravages of addiction and despair. It's impossible to know the exact source of his pain. Was it the pressure of being a child breadwinner? Was it the psychological toll of playing such a dark, intense role at such a formative age? Was it the sting of being discarded by the industry that had once celebrated him? Or was it simply a personal predisposition to addiction, a disease that can afflict anyone, regardless of their background? The truth is likely a combination of all these factors. His sister Lauren later spoke of the difficulties their family faced, acknowledging the immense pressures of their shared childhood in the entertainment industry. The Chapin family story is a poignant reminder that for every child star who shines, there is often a hidden cost, a debt that comes due long after the spotlight has faded. The historical debate surrounding The Night of the Hunter also adds a layer of complexity to Billy's story. The discussion about Charles Laughton's directing methods continues to this day. Was he a manipulative genius who pushed his young actors to their emotional limits for the sake of his art? Or was he simply an artist who did what was necessary to achieve his singular, brilliant vision? There is no easy answer. What is undeniable is that he elicited a performance from Billy Chapin that was raw, authentic, and utterly unforgettable. But we are left to wonder about the cost of that authenticity. Did the process of channeling so much fear and trauma as a child have a lasting impact on the man Billy would become? It's a question that can never be answered, but it hangs over his story, a reminder of the complex ethics of art and the vulnerability of the children who helped to create it. The legacy of Billy Chapin is, in essence, the legacy of The Night of the Hunter. Because the film was a failure upon its release, it took decades for it to be recognized as the masterpiece it is. In the 1960s and 70s, a new generation of critics and filmmakers rediscovered the movie, championing its bold artistic vision and its profound psychological depth. It is now considered by many to be one of the greatest and most frightening films ever made. And as the film's reputation grew, so did the appreciation for the incredible performance at its heart. Billy Chapin's work as John Harper is now rightly seen as a benchmark for child acting. He proved that a child character could be the strong driving force of a dark, complex, and thematically adult film. His performance paved the way for other serious child actors in challenging roles. His life story, however, has become a different kind of legacy. It is a powerful and tragic cautionary tale about the dark side of childhood fame. It's a story that resonates with the fates of so many other young performers who shone brightly before fading into obscurity and personal hardship. What makes Billy's story particularly poignant is the immense artistic credibility of his signature role. He didn't star in a lightweight sitcom or a sentimental family film. He starred in a timeless work of art. The eternal, celebrated nature of the film makes his personal decline and quiet, impoverished end all the more tragic. He is forever immortalized as the strong, resilient boy on the river, a stark and heartbreaking contrast to the fragile man he became. On November the 29th, 2016, Billy Chapin passed away after a long illness. He was 72 years old. His death was announced by his sister Lauren on social media. It was a quiet end to a life that had started with so much noise and promise. There were no major network tributes, no front-page headlines. It was the passing of a man who the world had largely forgotten, even though the boy he once played remained a cinematic icon. In the end, how do we reconcile the two images of Billy Chapin? There is the boy on the screen, the fierce protector, the symbol of childhood resilience in the face of unspeakable evil. And then there is the man who lived a life of quiet struggle, who succumbed to the very kind of darkness he had defeated in the film. Perhaps the only way to understand his story is to hold both truths at once. We can celebrate the incredible immortal gift he gave to the world of cinema. We can watch The Night of the Hunter and be in awe of the power and maturity of his performance. And we can also feel a profound sense of sadness for the man he became and for a life that was so profoundly shaped by the pressures of a childhood that was anything but normal. The final haunting image from the film is of John and Pearl safe at last, sailing down the river towards a new dawn. It's a moment of hope, of survival. It's the ending we all wanted for the boy on screen. The tragedy is that Billy Chapin, the real boy, never quite found that same safe harbor in his own life. But in the world of cinema, he is forever that boy on the river, clutching his sister's doll, sailing on into eternity, a timeless testament to a brilliant talent and a fragile, unforgettable soul.